In case you needed a refresher, the premise of the original XXX was that a US government spy agency needed to hire a YouTube extreme sports prankster to infiltrate a hard-partying anarchist terror cell because none of their normal agents could convincingly move within these circles. The premise of the new XXX is that Vin Diesel leading teams of C and D-list pseudo-celebrities through ridiculous action movies has made the Fast and Furious series super popular with global audiences, so why not try and make the exact same thing happen with one of his other movies? And it's not too bad. Now, nobody is more surprised by this than me, folks. The original XXX was a serious piece of shit, an obnoxiously terrible film that crystallized everything awful about early 2000s popular culture, along with Hollywood's attempt to pander to the same. Viewed in retrospect, wherein it's so profoundly dated it feels like it's 1,000 years old rather than just 15, it almost plays like a parody trying to imagine what a bunch of middle-aged studio executives would come up with trying to build an action franchise entirely out of trendy fads that circa 2002 13-year-old boys were assumed to be into, in this case including extreme sports, tattoos, graffiti, appropriated hip-hop culture, anarchism, hacker web jargon, and taking Vin Diesel seriously as an unironic action star. That last one being something that we kept trying to do until someone figured out they could just make those car movies self-aware and funny and save all that wasted effort. Anyway, it sucked. They made a sequel with Ice Cube that was actually kind of better, but not by much. Then everyone took about a decade off, and now here we are. So yeah, color me blown the fuck away that XXX The Return of Xander Cage is both a lot of genuine fun and surprisingly, well, joyful for a loud, dumb, might-as-well-be plotless action film that essentially exists for Paramount Pictures to try and get in on those gigantic overseas grosses that the Fast and Furious movies tend to pull in. Let me be perfectly clear, this is going to be no one's idea of great filmmaking. The screenplay makes very little actual sense, the storyline feels like it has air quotes permanently affixed to it, director DJ Caruso can barely be bothered to interestingly arrange anything that isn't an action sequence, and the characters are the definition of one note, most of them consisting of just a name, a single personality trait, and maybe an unconventional haircut or something. What we have here really is basically the cinematic equivalent of an energy drink. It's shiny, it's cloying, it's decorated like an Ed Hardy Trapper Keeper, it's almost certainly terrible for you and you're gonna piss it right out of your system 10 minutes after you're done with it. But man, does it get your ass charged up while it's going down. It's disposable nonsense, but it's enthusiastic disposable nonsense with exactly enough gumption to try and be about something and have ideas as to be intermittently compelling, even though said ideas largely play out like a Metal Gear game if Hideo Kojima had gotten a massive head injury and a subscription to The Intercept. The plot, if you can call it that, involves a group of terrorists stealing a device that lets them remotely hijack orbital satellites and drop them on cities as DIY bombs. Vin Diesel's globe-trotting extreme athlete and sometimes spy Xander Cage, who I guess only faked his death between the last movies, whatever, is recruited to stop them and assembles his own team of like-minded rogues, except now we've thankfully dropped the X Games business for everyone but Cage, so instead it's just here's some colorful characters I kinda know who can do a certain thing we might need at some point. Which here ends up meaning Ruby Rose as a sniper, Rory McCann as a guy who likes car crashes, and Chris Wu as a DJ. Donnie Yen, Deepika Padukone, Tony Jaa, and Michael Bisping are the bad guys, except maybe they aren't the bad guys because the movie is way on board with the whole globally conscious anti-authority troublemaker thing, so maybe they're all on the same side versus a secret common enemy whose identity you're gonna figure out immediately, so look, whatever, it moves too fast for anyone to care what it's about anyway. But as perfunctory as that narrative is, between the margins, it actually kinda works, mostly thanks to the cast. I mean, not so much Diesel. Yes, Xander Cage is just a Poochie-esque collection of marketable trends embodied by an actor of extremely limited range, fine, but Diesel and the film are also smart enough to give everyone else plenty of room to let their own natural personas fill up the vacuum, and lend something like authenticity to the film's otherwise glib straining for a sense of globally minded post-Borders adventure scenario. It genuinely feels international, mainly reflecting the fact that the film is clearly aimed at the sensibilities of expanding audience markets throughout Asia, Eastern Europe, and elsewhere as opposed to the US, sure, but that's refreshing considering how stale these things tend to become otherwise, along with lending a veneer of authenticity to all of the Rainbow Coalition of ass-kickers posturing. It's just fun to see refreshing atypical heroes, even in an otherwise conventional movie. Ruby Rose gets to show off action chops in a character that doesn't compromise her out and proud, unconventional persona. Patacone gets to dodge most of the stereotypical signifiers Western films tend to hand to Bollywood actors. Donnie Yen gets to have a full personality outside of just beating people up, though he does still beat a shitload of people up. Tony Jaa gets to play a goofy, show-offy rascal instead of a grim, no-nonsense badass for once, and holy shit, who knew this guy had it in him? It's like a whole different fucking actor showed up. I mean, hell, come to think of it, there's 4 actors of varying Asian backgrounds in this movie, and none of them are playing taciturn, sexless kung fu robots. That kind of thing adds up and matters. Yes, even in whole movies that are mainly about Vin Diesel skiing in the jungle or riding motorcycles on the surface of the ocean. I remain unconvinced that we actually needed another XXX movie, but I had a lot of fun with this one all the same. 3 stars, this is about as good as these things get.